Good evening. Thanks so much for everybody joining us. This is the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. I'm glad you're joining us tonight. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I wasn't expecting you to do the intro.
Hey, I'm here for you. I'm here. I'm here to take care of you. I got my hat on. I'm good. It's cold outside. It's winter time. We're ready to go.
You know something's wrong when it's warmer in Canada than it is in Texas, right? And that's the situation we're dealing with today. But even though it's colder in Texas than it is in Canada, we're here. We're going to have a good time tonight. We have a special guest tonight. Well, when I say special guest, I mean the guest who has talked the most on our YouTube, on our group over the years. Today we have Mr. Steviecoaster with us, who's going to be talking. What are we going to be talking about tonight, Phil, with
Well,
Stevie?
but Stevie wanted to basically share more content. Hey, he's waving at us. This idea about delivering more and using PowerShell more, and making it more accessible through IIS, the information services or Internet Information Services, which is web server for Windows.
Wait, wait. Isn't IIS bad? Isn't
IIS
isn't
works.
nobody? Isn't it that nobody uses IIS on the
It
public internet?
works on the public internet. That's probably not the best thing. But internally within your organization and where you really want to deliver your code, because you don't want to necessarily let random people run PowerShell scripts on the public internet, but inside your organization, that's definitely where you want to do it, because you problem with delivering scripts and working with scripts and delivering them to people who just want, give me a clicky button. That's all I want. No, 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 no. Here's a web page. Here we go.
Hey, Stevie, do you want to save us from our awful intro here? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And
I'm raising them
it
up.
is true that IIS doesn't have a big footprint in the internet world anymore publicly, but it's perfectly capable of doing it.
So,
It
so
can do
you're
it.
gonna
It's
you're here tonight to tell us HTTP over port 80 wide open to the internet, right? IIS
yeah,
admin,
yeah.
IIS
Just
admin,
send it.
right?
Yeah, just gonna
Perfect.
send it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
What are we talking about tonight? Give us a little
So
intro.
the general idea is IIS is capable of doing more than just serving web content. Like it can be more than a website, right? So if you've got a PowerShell script, you can configure IIS to serve up the contents of that PowerShell script, which you can consume via PowerShell, and then via a few different methods of tomfoolery, you can then execute that code on endpoints. So there'd be dragons, but there also be usefulness. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit of both as we go through things
I'm
this evening.
intrigued.
I'm
I'm intrigued.
intrigued. That's why
All
we
right.
bring them on.
So where do we start?
So I can share my screen as long as you guys allowed me to share my screen. Let's
No,
see.
probably not. We're just gonna listen to you talk all night.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's
We're doing
fine
hand
too.
puppets. Hand puppets.
I can do it that way. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I need this to go away, and I need VS Code to come alive. And we can
Was that
put
an
that
AI
later.
generated bear?
I wish. No, that was maybe Windows is using AI to tell me what desktop background it's going to use. I don't know. But no, it changes every day. It's kind of nice actually. But anyways, we're going to look at configuring IIS first. So if we look at what I've got going on here, just hiding in the background, I've got a server machine and I've got a client machine, and we're going to do stuff to these boxes as the evening goes on. And we'll take a look at this bootstrap script, which is the first thing that we're going to run to get started tonight. So all the script does really is takes a path, and this is where you are going to store all the PowerShell scripts that the IIS site is going to host. So when you configure a website in IIS, you give it a physical path on disk where things like the HTML, the JavaScript, the CS files, all that stuff is going to live in a traditional sense of hosting a website. Well, we're not going to host a traditional website tonight. We are just going to have a web server running that will serve us PS1 files, physical path. And then the first thing this script does is, depending on your server, we're going to install Chocolatey. And the cool thing about installing Chocolatey is it uses the exact method that we are going to talk about tonight to install itself. In that, if we go to chocolatey.org/install, so if we go to chocolatey.org/install, our install instructions, if you scroll down, say, hey, run this script, here's the script that you can review, which is super, super important. You always want to review this stuff before you actually invoke it, particularly in this method where you're going to serve a bunch of code over the internet. Now, we sign all of our stuff with a code signing certificate to add an extra layer of security so that you don't have to do things like have your execution policy set to bypass. That's what we're going to do tonight because I don't have a code signing cert. But in a real situation, you probably would want to, at the very least, sign all the scripts that you're going to host in your IIS instance so that you can have slightly more security on the PowerShell side of things as you get started. Now, in our Bootstrap script here, after we install Chocolatey, we're going to install IIS with Windows features, which just uses DISM under the hood. After that's done, we're going to import the web administration module. We will create that folder or that directory where we're going to host the PS1 files if it doesn't exist. And then we're going to start actually configuring IIS. So we're going to, in this case, we just statically assign a site name variable to RTPsug demo. So that's going to be the name of the site inside of IIS. And we say, hey, if it doesn't exist, go ahead and do it. Now, the secret sauce to making all of this work properly to work with PowerShell is line 39 in this file. You can create a new website and you can put PS1 files in that folder all you want. And if you try to download that PS1 file using PowerShell and invoke it using PowerShell, it's going to throw an error. I can't remember if it's 403 or a 40. I think it's a 404.3 that it's missing a MIME type to be able to handle it, to do it correctly. So line 39 is the secret sauce that adds that MIME type to the website, to the actual configuration for the website. It's a little convoluted in what it does. So we say we're going to add a configuration property to our web.config file. And I'm being very specific and saying, hey, only apply it to this particular site. And because the web administration module provides or adds a provider to PowerShell when you import it, we get this IIS drive available to us. So you can actually browse into the site like you would a regular folder structure. So we are going to say,
just pause you there.
Put it here. Sure.
Just for those who are unfamiliar with websites and all that kind of stuff, the MIME type's there just so that it doesn't try to automatically download that file and you click on it. And that stuff. That's what you're trying to achieve, as you saw before, is that you clicked on a PowerShell file and it just showed it to you as text. It didn't just, hey, download this file. So that's one of the points there. So it's kind of a key there, but that's background. Did you have any questions there, Mike?
Yeah, so I understand what Stevie wants to do, but I think someone watching this may not know all the pieces. So I wanted to go back to the top of your script for a second. So there's an assumption here. So let's some people don't even know what Chocolatey is. And so people might be wondering what the heck is actually happening on 26 and 27. And so just for the context, I think maybe we should just explain what's happening there.
Right. So line 26 installs Chocolatey, which is a package manager for Windows, similar to Winget. I'm going to say it's better than Winget, but it's package manager for Windows. And And then line 27, once we have Chocolatey installed, we can use Chocolatey to install IIS itself onto the server, because Chocolatey is aware of all the Windows features. We have a built-in source that ships with Chocolatey that allows you to do things. It uses DISM under the hood. So lines 26 and 27 are just me dog fooding the tools that pay my mortgage to get the box in a position to be able to continue and move on.
Well, it's there just to give you your prereqs at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah,
you're dog
exactly.
fooding, but if you did this externally and you weren't, didn't want to do that kind of work, that's basically you're getting yourself set up, and so all the prereqs are here, and it's just doing it for you in 2 lines of code.
But I think that you guys are also, discounting something that you're forgetting, which is the reason that you're doing 26 and 27 is because he wants to set this all up programmatically.
Absolutely.
He doesn't want to download and launch an executable and have to click through any menus. So he's using Chocolatey to install a package. Then he won't have to deal with any inputs and prompts. And then he can go on and install more things through that same method and do it all from a programmatic method and not have to deal with any interactive stuff. Right?
Yes.
We all know
exactly.
that.
We're going to run this here in a
that's
minute.
kind of assumed, right? And so we forget to mention that.
Yeah.
So the whole idea here is to basically do this all without any interaction. And so Chocolatey is not the only method to do this. It's just one that Stevie's very familiar with because he's an employee of the company and knows exactly what he can do with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So going back to line 39 to finish out this add web configuration property, we're going to do it to our specific site, the site that we're going to build, because otherwise, if you leave that out, if you just say IIS, for example, it's going to do it. It's going to add that MIME type at the root of IIS, and it will inherit down, like every website that you build in IIS will inherit that MIME type, unless you explicitly change the configuration to not inherit that MIME type. So you got to be a little bit careful with your configuration depending on what you're doing, that you don't accidentally expose the ability to serve up PS1 files to more websites than you intend to. So that's what that PS path is doing. And then we are defining where in the config file we're going to place the configuration. Now, the web.config file is an XML document, so we are going to put it in the system.webserver node inside of the static content node, and then we are going to give it a name of just a period. And I don't remember off the top of my head what the period means or delineates. It's in the documentation for add web configuration property if you're really super curious about it. But then we're going to fill out the actual attribute inside of the XML. So we're going to give it a file extension of PS1, and we're going to say the MIME type for this is just text plain. Now there are tons and tons of different MIME types available depending on what you're going to do. We could get into the weeds of serving content on web servers, and this applies to any web server. We happen to be talking about IIS this evening, but if you want to use nginx or Apache, you absolutely can do the same thing with those web servers as well. A MIME type is a universal thing in web server world. I just happen to be doing it on Windows because you don't really hear too many people talking about IIS stuff, and most, if not all of us, have Windows estates that we deal with, so we have it readily available to us without too much work. We don't have to build a Linux server if we're not familiar with it. You know, it's pick the right tool for the job, basically. If you're a Linux admin and you're in nginx or Apache all day, follow along to understand what MIME types are and what we're doing. But the configuration of that stuff is going to be different for you. This is very IIS specific. But once we do that, once we have all that stuff configured, all we do is we remove the default website from IIS, and then we perform an IIS reset just to make sure that IIS picks up that MIME type, everything's good to go. And if the website doesn't happen to start automatically after that IIS reset, we just make sure it starts. And then the last little thing that I do is specific to our demos tonight. But I've got a register C4B endpoint script which just sets up a client machine with Chocolatey and all kinds of bits and bobs on it. I'm going to copy that into the folder that is going to serve up the PowerShell scripts. Now that was a lot of word salad. That was a lot to go through. I think actually seeing it happen is going to hopefully make it click a little bit better for us. So if we go here, we'll open up IIS on this server, and let me know if this isn't big enough. I can try to make it bigger. I don't know if I am going to be able to be too helpful in that area, but I can try if it's too small. And we will expand out our Choco server. So this is the root node for IIS. And if we look, just so I can show you there's no smoke and mirrors, these are all the file extensions that are currently configured as with an associated MIME type inside of IIS by default with a default installation. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of them. But if we scroll down here to the Ps, you will see that we have PS, PSD, PSM. There's no PS1 files in here. So if we were to host a file currently, it wouldn't do us any good. It would do some good, but not very much. And as you can see, I do have one website already running on here because this is actually one of our environments, and they make for really, really, really good demo machines. So I just built an environment. So we already have one site. We're going to add another one, and the Bootstrap is going to nuke this default website. So let's go ahead and close
Hey,
IIS.
Steve,
Yeah, go for it.
now that you're on Windows, you can hold down the Windows key and press the plus and the minus key to zoom in and zoom out.
Inside that IIS window?
Yeah, because it'll do it on your host.
Hold down the Windows key and plus and minus.
Yeah.
What
See,
the world?
there's
Look
your
at
magnifier.
that.
Now press it one more time, and now you can zoom in and zoom out. You don't
Look
even
at
have to
that.
touch that thing.
That's fancy. Yeah, I'm going to remember that. Probably never,
Well,
but that's really cool.
that's what I'm here for. I'll help you out.
I'm going to try it. I'll make this a little bit bigger for us because I can do that pretty quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I want to run this Bootstrap PowerShell script, and it is not signed because I cannot afford a code signing certificate to do this stuff on the side. I am going to set my execution policy to bypass scopes to the process, and I'm going to force it. And then just here, I probably shouldn't be lazy for the folks that aren't familiar. So I'm going to set my execution process to bypass. I'm going to scope it to the process, meaning that it is running in the context of this PowerShell window. Once I close this PowerShell window, whatever the execution policy was when I opened it is what it will be again the next time it opens. I'm only affecting the running instance of PowerShell with this set execution policy. And then I'm going to force it so I don't get any prompts or anything. Now it's already set, but I'll set it again. And now we can run that Bootstrap script. So I will say desktop, Bootstrap, and we're going to get some warnings because Chocolatey is already installed, but then it's going to actually start doing work. Now, IIS is already installed, so this will basically no-op-dism like gets to a certain level, and then it says, oh, well, I've got nothing to do. It really quickly goes to 100%. And then it just outputs and says, hey, RTP demo has been created. We restarted it. We're all good to go. Now, if I open that IIS window again, I'm going to use your fancy thingy here, Joe. Oh, look at that. Look at that. What That's really cool. I don't think it needs zoomed in too much though. Now you'll notice that we don't have that default website anymore, and we have that RTP sub demo. And if we look at the root and we look at our MIME types, we still don't have PS1 files. My website for Chocolatey Central Management doesn't have PS1 files anywhere. Let me scroll down a little bit more. Doesn't have PS1 files in it. But if we go to my RTP demo site and we go to MIME types and we scroll down, we have our PS1 file or file extension in here. It's TextPlain and it's local. Now, if we were to go back to our PowerShell window, oops, let me clear the screen. And if we were to do get child item of that C RTP site border, we now have our register C4B endpoint config. And because we added that MIME type specifically to the site, there's that web.config file that'll have that defined inside of it. And now we can do invoke web request HTTP localhost register C4B endpoint.ps1. And what that's going to do is, actually, I'm going to use basic parsing. It's going to give me some stuff right. Here's the content. And if we really wanted to do something with it, what we could do is say dot content. Oh, that's not how you spell content. There's our script, right? Little trick for you. If you're going to be doing this sort of thing, instead of using invoke web request, use invoke REST method, because invoke REST method is smart. And it is smart in that it is just going to return the script for you. It doesn't have all the extra properties and stuff like that because it's used to, by default, accepting a JSON payload and converting it to an object. So invoke REST method with a PS1 script is just going to give you the contents of the PS1 script. Super, super useful. Now, I want to do one more thing before we pause for a minute. If anybody's got questions, I'll answer them. But then we'll go over to my client machine and we'll start actually playing with stuff. And that one additional thing that we're going to do is make this a little bit safer, because having stuff open on port 80 in 2025 just seems silly to me. So I'm going to go into this RTP SUG site. I'm going to add a new binding, switch it to HTTPS, and I've already got a bunch of stuff running over HTTPS on this server. So I'm going to just pick port 444 and select my certificate. Now I've got a wildcard from Let's Encrypt, so we will serve content over that. And then we will just check and make sure that everything is good. Choco server.steviecoaster.dev register C4B endpoint.ps1, run it. We're so, what did I do?
You didn't tell it the port number.
Nope, they're absolutely right. It's going, I don't know what to do. It's actually serving my CCM web page back to me.
You have a typo, dev Z.
Yeah, I saw it as soon as I hit enter. It's like, there we go. Beautiful. All right, so we're still good. Everything is still working. So now we can go to that client machine and play around with things. Unless people have questions, I'm going to keep going. Should I pause? Are we good, Mike or Phil or whoever?
I think we're okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think we're good. And I think, just to recap, we went through this whole exercise. We did a deployment, we did a bootstrap, we've done some IIS configuration, all for the objective that, hey, I can put PowerShell files, PS1 files in a folder, and then simply invoke an HTTP request effectively through a REST method and get that file back. And so get the contents of that file. That's the objective.
Yeah, the
And then we're gonna
objective is
build
to
upon
be
that.
able to do this. Now, this is a Windows sandbox. So I want, at the end of this, the goal is to be able to do something like invoke a REST method. Now I'm going to cheat and say HTTPS ch0.co/go, and I'm going to pipe that to invoke expression. Actually, you know what? First thing is set execution policy bypass process force. That'll do.
Yeah, we'll want to try and zoom
That's the point. This is the whole point of what we're doing. This is installing Chocolatey on this box right now. It's done. Now I can run Choco where before I couldn't. That's literally the whole point of the exercise, is to be able to make stuff like that available to you.
Yeah,
and with
for all
stuff
the
like that
friends out
available
there,
to us, we can do
for all the
really cool
friends out there,
things.
is that all security professionals, just close your eyes. Yeah, we're just
Exactly. Exactly. This is actually not terrible in like a really controlled environment, like in an enterprise where you control the server, you can control the file permissions on that folder to limit who has access to be able to read and write content into that directory, et cetera, et cetera. You can leverage IIS to require authentication to be able to download that script content as well. It's outside the scope of what we're going to talk to tonight, but there are additional layers that you can add to this to make it a little bit more secure. Now I'm going to actually open this folder and put a couple of files onto my server here. Now, what do I want? I want to put these over here. And actually, what I'm going to do is take this one out and put it on my client machine just locally over here. And we'll use VS Code to review these scripts before we actually run them anywhere. Let me just blow this up. So if I were to close Bootstrap, and let's open the local one. Now the local one and the other do essentially the same thing. They're just invoked differently. Now, in this one, what we do is we define that register C4B endpoint script and our downloader, which is just a system. It's just a web client. So instead of using like invoke web request with an out file parameter or invoke REST method with the out file parameter, we're using web client, which is a little bit faster across all versions of PowerShell, a little bit more performant, and I find it a little bit nicer. But I'm also well versed in PowerShell. If invoke REST method or invoke web request without file works for you, use that. Different strokes for different folks, right? And then, so we define some stuff, we get some stuff with 2 Fs preferably, and then we download that registration script and we save it to that register script variable, wherever that location is. In this case, we're just going to save it to the root of the C drive. Once the register script is on the C drive, we're going to build up some parameters and actually invoke it. So in this case, we are going to ask for a credential to connect to a repository where packages are. And we are going to do some additional things to this box. We're going to install a couple of packages. We're going to pin one of them. We're going to apply some different features to Chocolatey, and we're going to include some additional tools for like building packages and stuff like this. Is all Chocolatey related stuff, but it's what I have available, so that's what we're using. And then we're actually going to invoke that register script, and after we're all done, we'll clean that register script up. Now, this is all done so that the way it works is you take the script, like you would maintain the script, have it somewhere, throw it on a thumb drive, put it on a file share, whatever, go to a system, open up PowerShell, come over here, say set execution policy, and I've already showed you this once, so I'm going to cheat. Oops, fine. I'm going to learn to type, process, enforce. And then we are going to say run the desktop, the developer workstation.ps1 script. Just run it. It's going to connect and download some stuff, hopefully. Hopefully everything's good to go. And while that is doing its thing, what is it doing? Did my IP address change on things? It most certainly did. You scumbag. All right. Slight pause. Sorry, folks. Windows system, drivers, etc, hosts. Let's fix this. There we go. Yeah, that's going to pop. Stop. Stop trying to run, damn it. Fine, I'll just start over. Set execution policy, bypass process, force. That's developer run. There we go. Choco user. That looks correct. Grab my password, put it in, and it's going to do its thing, right? So it's going to go away. It's going to download Chocolatey. It's going to do all things. It's going to take a few minutes to actually go through and do all the work. While that is going, actually, I'm going to leave that minimized. Did I? Yeah, I did. Okay, so I'm going to. I thought I deleted that out of there. I did. Guess I didn't. While that's doing its thing, I'm going to review the other one, which is the one that you don't really have to pass around anywhere. It's the exact same script as local with one minor difference. So in this case, we are putting the register script in the C drive, register C for endpoint. That's fine. This one, just to show you a different way of doing things, I'm creating a temp directory and throwing that register C for endpoint in that temp directory. And then we're removing that whole temp directory at the end of it. It's the exact same script, right? You don't do anything different. The only difference here is now that we have IIS configured, we don't have to go through all of the hassle of looking at copying a file to a system, opening up PowerShell, setting the execution policy, and then invoking the script locally, doing all the work, and then cleaning that script up when it's all done, right? We don't have to do that anymore. We still have to do stuff, and I'm actually going to revert this snapshot while this is in the middle of things. Probably we'll have to change the IP address again, but I don't want to wait for that to finish. It'll be faster if we just revert our snapshot, go like this, and then open PowerShell. So we can do two things. We can check ping Chaka server and get that. We can open up Notepad, see Windows, see this. There we go. Was what? Okay, so it did change. The only thing that changed was that. That's fine. We will make sure that it pings. Oh, there was more that changed than that, apparently. The whole thing, Stevie. There we go. There we go. All right, cool. Set. Version. Policy. Bypass. Process. Force it. And now what we can do, just to show you that it's working, we can do our invoke REST method. We can say HTTPS Choco server developer underscore station.ps1. Oops, not 2.1. There's our script, right? So now we can do that, and we can say invoke expression. Now it's going to do the exact same thing, right? We'll say Chaka user. We're going to go find where I put my server so that I can grab that password again. Put it in here, say okay. And it'll do the same thing. And it's going to do the exact same thing again. It's going to install Chocolatey. It's going to do all the bits. And at the end of it, we're going to be left with a box that is fully ready to go. Now, if we look, you'll notice that both methods, we were still able to require some form of input from the user. And in this case, this repository credential parameter here, we used get credential to pop that window to ask the user to provide input in terms of the credential for connecting to the repository where the Chocolatey packages are stored, so that we can actually download it and install things from there. So there is a little bit of flexibility in still providing the end user the ability to enter data if needed via the scripts. Now, I didn't put this one over there. All this one does is shows a dad joke. I'm not actually going to do that because it'll upset Stephen Judd. So I'm not going to run it just to make him cringe. And he just went off mute. I'm waiting for it. Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. He ain't going to say nothing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate your kindness.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also,
I at least thought of you, bud. The files there.
Those ICANN has dad jokes. They're old. Got to get new material.
It's been forever.
It would have been awesome if you said, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to piss off Steven. And he says, thank you. And then you run it. That would have been great.
I mean, I can still run it. It'll take me 30 seconds to make it happen. No, we're good. Not going to do that. Not going to do that.
I know this is Mike's meeting and all, but Get out, Mike.
And just to show you, there's like more. There's more stuff that you can do here. Too, like there are other ways to make this stuff happen. Other than invoke rest method, and at the end of it, invoke expression. So if we were to close these out, let's just start a new file. One of the ways that we do things, or one of the ways that you can do things, is to prefetch content. So for example, you could say the script is going to be equal to HTTPS. Let's just use, so that we actually have something, our install script for Chocolatey. So we can say our downloader is going to, actually, let me define my downloader first. So let's just call it DL equals system client. Let's set PowerShell so we can start getting some tab completion, so I don't have to type everything. New. That, and then what we can do is say script is equal to download dot. Let's go. Download. In this case, we're going to say download string. Like this. Now, what's going to happen when we do this? Let's pop a new terminal up here, and let's get our downloader, and then let's get our script. So now we have, if we look in here, we have our script. There's our actual script. Now, there's another way to invoke this stuff, in that you can say script block. So script block equals script block new, and then we can give it our script. Once we have our script block like that, we can say and, which is the call operator in PowerShell. If you don't know what that looks like, you can run get help about underscore operators, and it'll teach you all about them. There's a whole bunch of operators. The ampersand is one of them. The period is another one. That's, I can't remember. Sean will tell me what it is in the chat or on voice. It's the dot sourcing one. We'll say and script block, and what this will functionally do is the exact same thing as doing IRM HTTPS chgo.co/go type 2 IX, or invoke expression. The difference is with this approach, I can't pass anything in to the parameters. Like, I have to hope that the parameter that's been defined, like if we look at this workstation one now, if this was a proper script with a commandlet binding and a param block, and we had a parameter and we made it mandatory, and we said it was a string, and we'll say first name, like when I execute this script, it's going to prompt me for that first name input because it needs it. It's a required parameter. However, I can't pass that in when I'm using the invoke expression mechanism. Invoke expression. If you look at the parameters for invoke expression, there ain't none. Like it's very limited. It's, hey, take this string and run it, which is useful but not very useful at the same time. However, because this is a script block and we're using the call operator, if we had, a parameter or a set of parameters that we need to define, we could say parameters equals, we could define all our stuff. So we could say first name equals, Stephen with a PH, and then we could say nickname equals Stevie with a V, because it's not any fun to be not confusing. We can then splat those parameters like you normally would anything else. So you can still use IIS to host your PowerShell scripts and then do a little bit of work inside of your other scripts that you write to be able to consume those scripts and then do stuff with them. But it just depends on what you're doing, right? If you're doing something really quick, like installing Chocolatey or bootstrapping a system, where you don't want to pass parameters, you don't need to pass parameters in those instances. The invoke Rust method with invoke expression pipeline thing is fine. If you need to do other things this way with creating a script block and invoking it is probably the way to go. And I realize now that I need to change this to script block. And there we go. And I'm going to pause there because I talk insanely fast and probably too much. And I hope everybody's not deer in the headlights because I can't see the chat or any other people. So I'm in my own little world.
No, I think you do it. You're fine.
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job, and I think you're doing a great job explaining where you are. So, all the points where I want to come back and say, hey, do you see what we did here? You basically took all those thoughts and you jumped out too. So, basically getting that code and then the script block, you're basically creating that script block. So, and then why you want to add the parameters and why that's the functional is one of those, hidden gems, and which is always great. And why I appreciate that you coming and sharing the knowledge with us is because you take those opportunities to say, hey, here's what I'm doing, but this is why I'm doing it. And so that's, pretty much one of the key opportunities that people should learn from that. And, try and understand why things happen, not just, hey, blindly follow code.
Yeah.
Mr. Judd has a question.
Yeah, it's more of a comment than anything else. So in line 1, I just wanted to point out for those that aren't as savvy on PowerShell is Stevie's setting up a .NET type there for web client. So he creates the new web client. I don't know if you covered this, Stevie, but you went fast, so that's the part I may have missed.
Yeah, so
just talk your way through that a little bit slower. So
yeah,
explain what you're doing on 1 and 3.
What I'm doing on 1 and 3 is cheating. So I'm avoiding all of the overhead of using commandlets. You can absolutely rewrite line number 1 into DL equals, well, sort of kind of. You can replace lines 1 and 2, and instead you can define it script equals invoke rest method https ch0.co/go. Depending on what you're doing, the overhead of doing this, or if you need to, using invoke web request, is slow, and there's more code that you have to write. to do a simple download operation. It really, really, really depends on what you're doing. But using the web client directly, which is what invoke REST method, well, I don't know that invoke REST method uses a web client, but rather an HTTP client. I have to go look. I know it's an HTTP client for both in PowerShell 7, but in PowerShell 5 it's different. And you can do all kinds of things when you like use the .NET type directly. Like there's methods and stuff available on the type that the commandlet doesn't utilize or have the ability to use, because it doesn't have a parameter that exposes it. It doesn't have logic that passes data to that particular method internally, whatever. You can also cheat and get rid of line 2 entirely. Once you instantiate a member of a class like this, you say system.NET web client new. So you've got your new instance here. You can just start accessing the methods directly. So you can say download string right here and do it that way. And you can get rid of line 2 entirely. And now there you go. Done. They take 2 lines down into 1. So, a lot of this stuff is meeting you where you're at in your PowerShell journey, right? Like if you're just getting started, use the help system and get help with invoke REST method and invoke web request. Read the help, see what parameters are available, use the examples, wrapped around things, and use that stuff until you're comfortable with wanting more, right? Once you want more, you can go finding more, because there's a lot more for you to discover out there, a lot more that you can do once you start, getting exposure, getting experience, seeing how other people do things, whatever. Like the language gets more powerful the more you use it, right? I've been using PowerShell for a really, really long time, so I know the ins and outs a little bit better than some others. And there are a lot of people on this call that know the language even better than I do, right? So, and that's the whole point, is to meet you where you are and give you the tools that will hopefully give you some ideas that you can use in your organization to make you a better technologist, because this stuff will amplify you wherever you're at, right? So that's the whole point. If you don't understand something, use the easier option until you do. But I think,
or if invoke expression might be blocked by your organization's security policies,
could be.
Use something else.
Yeah, could be.
Not saying, but
Yeah.
saying that might be the case too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird gotchas with things. It goes without saying too, like if you're not using PowerShell 7 today in your organization, really push for it, especially around the web stuff. The rewrite of the web commandlets is a night and day difference in your experience with working with web resources, whether you're doing this, whether you're working with APIs, whatever you're doing with web technologies. It's just better in PowerShell 7. It's faster, it's more capable. There's a lot more functionality in terms of using different authentication methods, whether that's usernames and passwords, whether that's using API tokens, personal access tokens, PATs, JIT tokens, like all of that stuff. It's just better handled in PowerShell 7, where in PowerShell 5 you have to build headers to do a lot of this stuff. There are parameters now that you can just pass to make your life a lot easier. For example, a really good example is working with an API that has paging with invoke REST method. Paging data and working with an API that returns page data with Windows PowerShell sucks. It's doable. It's only a couple lines of code, but in PowerShell 7, it can be a single line. It's super awesome. So if you're not using PowerShell 7 today, do it. And if your organization pushes back on you, do the research, build the case for adopting it inside of your organization. And it's not going anywhere. It's supported by Microsoft, so there really isn't a reason that you shouldn't be using it unless you've got like a super arcane old something in your org that can't interact with PowerShell 7. You're probably not interacting with that thing with PowerShell anyways. Or if you are, it's an old version and you can't use anything different. So it's just one of those things. But hopefully this was useful. I don't really have much else other than that. I know it's a pretty short session tonight. It's only been like 30 minutes or whatever.
I think the value is
But-
just the fact that seeing a veteran doing things that you don't typically expect to get content from, right? And then just gleaning the gems that we've come back to with some of the things is that, hey, using these other structures, using even, dumping down to .NET, hey, you've just technically thrown out, 4 different ways in which to actually invoke, web calls, so you kind of implied it in a bunch of ways. And like, here's all these other ways in which you can do things. So if you're having a problem here, or if you're in one browser and another, or not even browser, but in one environment to go to another, these are just different ways in which you can achieve the same goal. And that's also the power of PowerShell. But this idea of, delivering other content in different ways, and that, hey, I want to, I can't host it onto a website, but I do have web servers available. Or here's how you build a web server pretty quickly. And so some of these values are there, and the gems, hey, you can just pull them out and go from there. So I really appreciate it, Stevie. You did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do everybody a solid here real quick, and let me just throw this out here, and I'll put a link in the chat. If I actually copy the data so that y'all can get it later. Here's that bootstrap. Bootstrap IIS on host scripts. It's good. And then we'll just pause bootstrap IIS PS1. I really like calling things PS2 files today.
Just curious, Stevie, what versions of IIS did you test against?
I know this works all the way back to server 2012. I don't know what version ships on 2012 and up. So I don't know exactly what versions that is. But I know it works on server 2012 and up. And it probably works on server 2008, to be honest with you, but I haven't seen or touched a server 2008 box in a very long time. I am going to put this in the chat. There you go. Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to stop sharing unless people have questions, need me to cover anything else. Otherwise, I'll stop sharing and we can commence drinking.
What do you mean
All right.
commence? Were we not supposed to be drinking this whole time?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Stevie, for certainly giving us the a good content. And I think I want to reiterate that content that, it is great to watch a veteran go through it. And even one of the values too, I think is if you watch the video, you can also see is how somebody who's been in the industry for a long time resolve problems along the way. That is also, I think, is a valuable tool. And so I think it's fun to watch people mess up, quote unquote, but it's not really mess up. It's more of, hey, how do you solve problems on the fly, and how do you actually work through those challenges? And that's a value tool. So I appreciate that, Stevie, and I think it's a good one. Thanks. Any other comments, Mike? Or
No,
if not, thanks for joining.
It was concise and really interesting to watch. Good job, Stevie. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in this kind of content, check out the rest of the content on the YouTube channel. We have over 130 presentations of various YouTube content, of various PowerShell content, excuse me. And if you take a look, I'm sure you'll find something that is interesting for what you're trying to learn. Thanks again, Stevie. And on behalf of Phil and myself, we're going to say good night. Thank you again.
Good night.